Friend, there comes a time in every life when the noise becomes too loud, the opinions too many, and the distractions too heavy. In that moment, the greatest act of strength is not to speak louder, but to become silent. Not to chase every voice, but to turn inward. Not to seek applause, but to seek God. Right now, God is calling you into the stillness, not because He wants to hide you, but because He wants to shape you. The world will pull at your name, demand your attention, feed your pride, and exhaust your soul. But when you focus on yourself in the presence of God, when you humble yourself beneath His mighty hand, something powerful begins to happen inside of you. God begins a transformation in silence that no stage, no crowd, and no human praise can ever achieve. People today are too quick to respond, too eager to defend, too restless to be still. But God says, be silent. Focus on what I am doing inside of you. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to explain your every move. You don't have to rush into the noise of the world to be seen or heard. The greatest power is not found in prideful noise, but in humble silence. God does His deepest work when your mouth is closed and your heart is open. God fights for the one who bows quietly, who resists pride, and who places their full attention on His voice alone. You do not have to fight to be understood. You have to fight to remain grounded in God's presence. Some of you are losing your strength because you're constantly trying to manage how others see you. You're speaking too much, defending too much, responding to voices that don't deserve your energy. But hear this. Silence is not weakness, it is wisdom. Humility is not self-abandonment, it is surrender to God's greater hand. When you focus on yourself, on growing in private, healing in private, praying in private, you are inviting God to do something eternal inside of you. Let them talk, let them assume, let them mock. But you stay silent, stay humble, stay close to God. You don't need the world's understanding when you have God's favor. The more you elevate yourself to respond to every attack, the more you remove yourself from God's covering. But when you lower yourself, when you choose silence over ego, humility over performance, you position yourself for divine strength. Some of you are fighting battles with your mouth that can only be won in the Spirit. You are using energy to prove yourself, to explain your journey, to gain respect from those who were never assigned to understand you. But God says silence is your shield, humility is your sword, focus is your power. When you speak too quickly, you interrupt what God is trying to reveal. When you act out of pride, you forfeit the promotion God was preparing for your humility. There is nothing more powerful than a man or woman who says, I don't need validation. I only need God. And that person quiet, focused, surrendered, becomes unstoppable. You see, the world teaches pride. It rewards noise. It applauds the loudest person in the room. But God exalts the lowly. God honors the humble. God lifts up the one who does not exalt himself. You want to be powerful? Then empty yourself before God. You want to be elevated? Then stop chasing applause and start seeking alignment with the will of God. Your silence in the presence of conflict is not cowardice, I trust. Your refusal to fight back with your tongue is not weakness, it's wisdom from above. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you are stepping deeper into God's strength. Every time you choose humility over ego, you are choosing eternity over the temporary. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to prove your worth to broken people. You don't need to match energy with fools. You are not called to their level. You are called higher. And those who walk with God don't react like everyone else. They respond from a place of divine awareness. God doesn't train warriors in crowds. He trains them in caves, in silence, in prayer, in tears that no one sees, in nights where no one understands. God strengthens the soul in seasons where no one claps for you. And in that silence, your roots grow deep. In that silence, your faith becomes unshakable. Focus on yourself, not for pride, but for purification. Work on your character. Cleanse your heart. Discipline your habits. Align your motives. Let God prune everything that does not bear fruit. When you stop looking outward and start looking inward, God will begin to reveal things inside of you that were blocking your destiny. Some of you are surrounded by chaos because you've been too focused on the world's noise. But God says, come away, sit with me, let me show you what needs to be healed, let me deal with your broken places, let me silence the storm inside your mind, and when you allow that silence to speak louder than the chaos, you will begin to walk with a confidence that does not need applause, because it comes from God alone. Too many people want to be seen before they are ready. They want to speak before they are wise. They want to lead before they've learned how to follow. But God does not elevate those who rush. God promotes the patient. God promotes the silent. God promotes the humble. If you can be trusted with silence, you can be trusted with power. If you can be trusted to sit in the back quietly, God can trust you to lead from the front boldly. But the process requires discipline. It requires you to bite your tongue, to walk away from pointless arguments, to humble your ego, to not respond, even when you are right. And that right there is spiritual maturity. There is strength in staying silent when you could have spoken. There is power in walking away when your flesh wants to stay and fight. You don't need to respond to every insult. You don't need to prove your worth. God sees, God knows, God rewards. The ones who walk in silence are the ones who God lifts in due season. But you must trust His timing. You must resist the urge to promote yourself. God cannot bless pride. God cannot anoint arrogance. God anoints the broken, the contrite, the lowly. And when you walk in humility, your silence becomes your strength, and your focus becomes your protection. The ones who go far in life are not the ones who shout the loudest. They are the ones who learn how to shut the door, get on their knees, and do the inner work. They are the ones who understand that real transformation doesn't happen on the outside, it happens when no one is watching. God works in hidden places. He refines in the dark. He promotes in the quiet. And when you stop looking for the spotlight, you will start seeing the sunrise of God's presence in your life. Let the world race for applause. You be still. Let them run to be heard. You remain silent. Because while they are talking, God is preparing you. You may feel overlooked, you may feel forgotten, you may feel invisible, but listen to this. God does His greatest work in people who the world overlooks. You are not forgotten. You are being forged. You are not invisible. You are being preserved. You are not behind. You are being aligned. And this process requires silence. It requires humility. It requires you to stop defending yourself and start depending on God fully. The moment you release control is the moment you truly give God permission to lead. But that leadership will never begin until your pride ends. You don't need to share your every move. You don't need to explain your growth. You don't need to convince anyone of your journey. Just focus on yourself. Grow quietly. Heal deeply. Pray earnestly. Listen more than you speak. Seek wisdom more than you seek attention. And above all, stay humble. The ones who kneel before God will stand before any giant. The ones who humble themselves will be honored by heaven. And the ones who stay silent in the fire will be remembered by God when the time for promotion comes. Focus on yourself and let God focus on your destiny. Humble yourself and God will raise you in due season. Stay silent and your silence will speak volumes. You are not called to noise. You are called to purpose. And purpose is refined in humility. There is a beauty in walking silently while everyone else is shouting. There is a strength in focusing inward while others chase outward validation. The soul that is anchored in God does not panic in storms because it has already found peace in the silence. The voice of pride is loud, but the whisper of God is soft. And if your soul is too noisy, you will miss it. God does not shout to compete with the world, He whispers to see if you're truly listening. So quiet the noise, turn off the distractions, lower your voice, and let your heart be still. That's where you will hear Him. That's where He will give you direction. That's where He will begin to reveal things you never saw before. You've tried doing it your way. Now, try surrendering, try silence, try humility. Let go of the pride, let go of the fear. Let go of the pressure to perform, and just be still. Focus. Not on them, not on your enemies, not on the ones who betrayed you, not on those who laugh at your silence. Focus on yourself. Humble yourself. Stay silent. And in that silence, watch how God begins to move mountains on your behalf. Watch how He restores, elevates, and redeems. Watch how He answers the prayers you never spoke out loud. Watch how He brings peace into places you thought were permanently broken. Watch how He uses your silence as a weapon, not to destroy others, but to build you. The battle is not always won with a sword, it's won with stillness. Not with a loud voice, but with a quiet soul. Not with pride, but with humility. And when God sees that you are willing to stay hidden in His presence rather than chase the world's praise, He will trust you with a purpose greater than anything you've imagined. Be still. Be lowly. Be quiet. Because in that place, God will do more for you than you could ever do for yourself. You may think that silence is weakness in a world that demands reaction. You may believe that humility makes you less than others. But listen closely. In the eyes of God, the humble are the strongest, and the silent are the wisest. The proud shout for recognition, but God lifts the one who bends low in sincerity. The loud push to the front, but God draws near to the one who quietly waits on Him. This is not about shrinking it. It is about surrender. It is not about disappearing. It is about aligning. When you humble yourself, you are not stepping down. You are stepping into a deeper place of divine authority. God does not operate in ego. He works through brokenness, through humility, through quiet hearts that are yielded to His will. Some of you are walking through seasons where you feel God is hiding you. You are not receiving the attention you used to. The doors are not opening as fast. The applause is fading. But this is not punishment. This is preparation. God hides you to heal you. He silences your platform so He can strengthen your foundation. If He allowed you to move too quickly, the weight of the spotlight would crush you. So He brings you into a quiet season where your character is shaped, where your soul is refined, and where your motives are purified. The silence is not your end, it is your elevation. The delay is not a denial, it is divine discipline. And when God is finished building you in the dark, He will reveal you in the light. But only if you let go of pride, only if you humble yourself and submit to the process. You see, pride demands progress now. It wants recognition without responsibility. It craves visibility without virtue. But God will never give you something that will destroy you. That is why He says, come away from the noise. Come away from the comparison. Come away from the competition. God wants to give you peace, not pressure. But peace is found in humility. Peace is born from silence. And the moment you choose to step back from chasing approval, God begins to show you who you truly are. Not what others think, not what your past says, not what the world demands, but who you are in the stillness where God alone speaks. The person who learns to sit with themselves in silence is the person who becomes a vessel for God's greatness. They do not need noise to feel significant. They do not need claps to feel valued. Their confidence is not built on the opinions of others, it is rooted in the truth that God is with them, even in the quietest valley. And that truth becomes a foundation so strong that no storm can shake it. But this kind of strength cannot be bought. It cannot be taught in a classroom. It cannot be inherited from others. It is earned in the fire of silence, in the crucible of humility, and in the daily discipline of focusing on what truly matters, your relationship with God. You must understand that not every battle is yours to fight. Not every argument deserves your words. Not every critic deserves your energy. Sometimes, the greatest answer you can give is silence. Because when you remain silent, you allow God to speak. When you humble yourself, you allow God to move. And when God speaks on your behalf, no accusation, no slander, no betrayal can stand against His justice. You are not your defender, God is. You are not your savior, God is. And the more you try to fight your own battles, the more you delay the victory that only comes through surrender. There is wisdom in knowing when to speak and when to be silent. And those who walk with God deeply are not impulsive with their words. They understand the weight of silence. They know the value of waiting. They trust that God will do more in one moment of divine intervention than they could do in a lifetime of striving. Silence becomes their weapon. Humility becomes their armor, and focus becomes their direction. These are not passive traits, they are powerful strategies. And when you embrace them, you will begin to walk with clarity, discernment, and strength that does not come from man, but from God Himself. Some of you have been so distracted trying to fix others that you've neglected your own soul. You've tried to correct everyone, explain everything, solve every conflict. But God is saying, focus on yourself. Not in selfishness, but in sacred responsibility. Clean your heart. Examine your intentions. Repair your thinking. Redirect your desires. There is work to be done inside of you that is more important than anything happening around you. And when you take that seriously, when you look inward with honesty and surrender, God will meet you there with transformation. Too many people are performing. Too many are pretending. But God is calling for authenticity. He's calling for realness. He's calling for those who would rather be right with Him than popular with people. He's calling for those who will choose silence over spectacle, purity over praise, humility over hype. And in that secret place, in that quiet space where no one is watching, God will reward you openly for what you did in secret. The tears you cried in silence, He saw them. The forgiveness you gave without applause, He counted it. The self-control you showed when your flesh wanted revenge, He honors it. Nothing done in humility is wasted. Every seed you plant in silence will bear fruit in season. The wise are not those who talk the most, they are the ones who listen to God the deepest. They are not easily provoked, they are not easily shaken. They walk with a calm that confuses the proud. They respond to insults with peace. They turn away from drama. They guard their energy. They keep their focus because they know the price of distraction is too high. Every time you get caught in foolish arguments, you lose time. Every time you lower yourself to fight with prideful people, you lose focus. But when you stay silent, you keep your peace. And peace is more valuable than being right. Peace is not found in louder words, it is found in deeper surrender. It is not the result of a perfect life, it is the reward of a humble spirit. God gives peace to those who let go. Let go of the need to be seen. Let go of the urge to respond. Let go of the pressure to perform. Humble yourself. Focus on what matters. Be still. And the same God who parted seas for the faithful, who calmed storms for the devoted, who raised up the lowly and cast down the proud, that same God will guide you. But you must let Him. Let the world chase platforms. You chase purity. Let the world chase relevance. You chase righteousness. Let the world chase popularity. You chase purpose, because the ones who bow low will be lifted high. The ones who walk quietly will be led boldly. And the ones who surrender fully will be blessed completely. But it begins with silence. It begins with humility. It begins with focus. You can't hear God clearly when pride is speaking louder than your faith. You can't see the path clearly when ego blocks your view. Strip it all away. Get quiet. Get low. Get focused. When you focus on yourself through the lens of God's truth, you begin to realize just how much work there is to be done inside. The hidden bitterness, the silent fears, the buried pain thieves must be dealt with. Not on a stage, not in a crowd, but in the secret place where your soul meets God. And only a humble spirit is willing to face those places. Only a surrendered heart is willing to say, God, change me from the inside. That is where healing happens. That is where true growth begins. Not in noise, but in stillness. Not in pride, but in humility. And when that inner work is done, when you've submitted, when you've grown, when you've humbled yourself, then you will rise. But your rise won't come with arrogance. It will come with quiet power. You won't need to boast. Your presence will carry authority. You won't need to demand attention. Your peace will draw it. And those who once looked down on you will ask, how did you become so strong? And you will know, it was not by might, not by performance, not by force, but by staying silent, staying humble, and focusing fully on what God was doing within. When you walk with God, you begin to understand that power does not always look like thunder. Sometimes it looks like quiet obedience. Sometimes it looks like tears falling in prayer while no one is watching. Sometimes it looks like walking away from conflict, not because you are weak, but because you are strong enough to let God handle what your flesh wants to control. This world tells you to speak your truth, to assert yourself, to demand your place. But what the world doesn't understand is that those who walk with God do not need to prove anything to anyone. God's approval is enough. His wisdom is enough. His plan is perfect, and His timing cannot be rushed. There is something sacred about a person who chooses silence in a time of attack. There is something powerful about a person who chooses humility when they could choose revenge. That kind of strength cannot be imitated. It must be cultivated through time spent alone with God. It is in those hidden moments that your soul is forged. The outside world may not see it, but heaven sees everything. Every insult you ignore, every false accusation you endure without retaliation, every moment you choose peace instead of pride, God records it, and He will not forget it. What is done in humility will be rewarded by God Himself. Maybe not today, maybe not in front of people, but in due time and in the perfect way. We live in a generation that thinks silence is weakness and humility is failure, but God works opposite to the world. What man praises, God often rejects, and what man overlooks, God chooses to elevate. You don't need to keep up with them. You don't need to match their pace or imitate their noise. All you need to do is stay grounded in the presence of God. Your identity must not come from popularity, from wealth, from status, or from applause. It must come from knowing that you belong to God, that you are known by Him, guided by Him, and covered by Him. The deeper your connection with God, the less you will need from others. The more secure you are in His hands, the less desperate you will be for attention. Humility is not the absence of confidence, it is confidence placed in the right hands. It is saying, I trust God more than I trust myself. It is saying, I don't need to defend what God will protect. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's not cowardice, that's spiritual maturity. God blesses the one who lowers their head in reverence, not the one who lifts their voice in arrogance. God anoints the one who bows in the private room, not the one who screams in the public square. Your promotion doesn't come from how loud you speak, it comes from how faithfully you walk. Silence has a voice in the spirit. It speaks louder than noise. It declares trust without saying a word. It announces maturity without shouting for attention. And when you master the discipline of staying silent when everything inside you wants to respond, you are aligning yourself with divine power. The strongest people are not those who fight every battle, they are those who know which battles belong to God. They are those who can walk through fire without opening their mouth, because they trust that God sees, God hears, and God repays. You cannot carry the weight of your destiny if you're too distracted by defending yourself. Every time you stop to argue with someone who does not understand your calling, you slow down the journey God has for you. Every time you try to prove your worth to someone who doubts you, you drain energy that could have been used for growth. Let your progress be your proof. Let your peace be your testimony. Let your focus be your answer. Because when God is truly at the center of your life, your silence becomes your sermon. There will always be someone who misunderstands you. There will always be someone who doubts your motives. Let them talk. Let them assume. Let them believe whatever they choose. That is not your battle. Your only responsibility is to stay in alignment with God. When your motives are pure and your focus is clear, no amount of noise can derail what God has already written. The path of the humble is not free from hardship, but it is always guarded by God, and when you humble yourself, God becomes your shield. When you stay silent, God becomes your advocate. You don't need to shout to be powerful. You don't need to boast to be relevant. You don't need to advertise your goodness. If you truly walk with God, your life will speak without a word. Your actions will carry weight. Your peace will confuse those who expected you to break. And your humility will attract blessings that pride could never earn. Because God opposes the proud, but He lifts up the one who lowers himself. That's not just a lesson, it's a law. You cannot fake humility before God. He sees your heart. He knows your intentions. And He rewards those who come to Him with sincere reverence. Every time you choose silence instead of gossip, you are planting seeds of wisdom. Every time you choose humility instead of retaliation, you are building a foundation that cannot be moved. Every time you choose to focus on your inner work instead of seeking outer recognition, you are preparing yourself for something greater. But it takes discipline. It takes maturity. It takes a soul that is anchored in something higher than the praise of people. The humble soul understands that validation from God is more important than attention from the crowd. Let your silence be your strength. Let your humility be your covering. Let your focus be your clarity. Because in this noisy world, it is those who have mastered the art of being still who hear the clearest. It is those who have surrendered their need to be seen, who are seen by God. You don't need to market yourself when heaven has already marked you. You don't need to chase platforms when God has already prepared your place. Stay low. Stay still. Stay surrendered. In the quiet place, God reveals truth. In the humble heart, God deposits power. In the focused life, God releases favor. So do not waste time explaining yourself. Do not waste energy chasing those who do not value your presence. Do not lose your way trying to make others comfortable. Your peace matters. Your growth matters. Your connection with God matters more than anyone's opinion. You are not for everyone, and that's okay. You are for God. And if you are for God, He will be for you. He will go before you. He will open doors. He will close wrong ones. He will correct what you cannot. But He needs your humility. He needs your stillness. He needs your complete trust. And if you give that to Him fully, without conditions, you will walk into seasons you did not earn. You will receive favor you did not chase, and you will experience peace that passes all understanding. Not because you shouted, not because you forced it, but because you submitted, because you focused, because you humbled yourself in the sight of God. And the one who sees all things will lift you up in due time. There is a sacred strength in the one who refuses to be moved by noise. There is divine wisdom in the heart that resists the urge to respond to every voice. God does not speak through chaos. He speaks through calm. He does not guide through ego. He guides through surrender. You must understand, the more deeply you walk with God, the less you feel the need to justify yourself. The more you abide in His presence, the quieter your spirit becomes, because you know that your life is not a performance, but a process in the hands of the Almighty. And when you trust the process, you will not rush the outcome. You are not called to be loud, you are called to be light. And light doesn't need to scream to be seen. It simply shines. In a world addicted to attention, you must become addicted to alignment with God. That means letting go of your desire to explain yourself, to be understood by everyone, to fix every misunderstanding. It means finding your identity not in opinions, but in obedience. When you reach that level of faith, you stop chasing affirmation. You stop craving applause. You stop running after people who were never sent by God. Instead, you become anchored, rooted, unshakable. Because the deeper your roots in God, the less the storms outside can move you. And this is where God begins to trust you. Not when you have 1,000 followers, but when you follow Him in silence. Not when your name is known by many, but when your soul is known by Him. God raises up the one who has been tested in obscurity. He exalts the one who stayed quiet in the fire. He gives power to the one who submitted in stillness. You don't earn that kind of favor by striving, you receive it by humbling yourself again and again, even when your pride wants to rise. Even when your flesh wants to speak. Even when your heart wants to retaliate. The real power is in restraint. It's in the ability to walk away, to keep your peace, to protect your focus. Because not every battle is your calling. Not every challenge is your assignment. And not every voice deserves your attention. If the enemy can't destroy you, he will distract you. And one of his favorite weapons is pride. Pride that tells you to prove yourself. Pride that tells you to respond. Pride that demands to be seen. But God calls you to something higher. He calls you to humility, not the kind that is timid and passive, but the kind that is bold enough to be still. The kind that says, I don't need to win this argument because I'm already victorious in God's hands. The kind that says, I don't need to show off because I know who I am when no one is watching. That kind of humility breaks chains. That kind of humility silences the enemy. That kind of humility invites God to fight for you in ways you never imagined. You cannot build a life of peace on a foundation of pride. You cannot build a future with God if your heart is consumed by the desire to be right, to be seen, to be praised. Let it go. Let the need to explain yourself die. Let the desire for approval be buried. God will not share His glory with your ego. And the more you cling to the opinions of people, the further you drift from the truth of God. But the moment you release it, all the moment you say, God, you alone are my validation, that is when you begin to rise. Not in the world's eyes, but in God's divine favor. People may look at your silence and mistake it for weakness. They may interpret your humility as submission to them. Let them. Because you are not serving people's perceptions. You are walking in alignment with a higher purpose. You are obeying God, even when it costs you your pride, and obedience to God will always cost you something. But what you lose in ego, you gain in clarity. What you lose in attention, you gain in peace. What you lose in applause, you gain in purpose. Because God does not waste the faithfulness of the humble. He stores it. He honors it. He multiplies it. There will come a day when all the silent sacrifices will speak. There will come a time when your hidden prayers will bloom in public favor. But you must trust the timing. You must trust the silence. You must trust the God who sees it all. Every battle you chose not to fight, every insult you endured, every tear you cried in surrender, every moment you kept your mouth closed while your heart was breaking, He saw it, He recorded it, and He will repay it. Not with fleeting applause, but with eternal reward. Not with temporary praise, but with lasting peace. Stay focused. Because what God has for you requires more than a good appearance. It requires a clean heart. It requires a pure motive. It requires a quiet spirit that knows when to speak and when to stay silent. And many will not understand your silence. They will mock your stillness. They will question your humility. But their misunderstanding is not your responsibility. You do not owe anyone an explanation for the path God has placed you on. Let them question. Let them walk away. Let them misjudge. You keep walking. You keep building. You keep growing. In the silence, in the stillness, in the sacred space where only you and God dwell, do not envy those who rise quickly. Do not compare yourself to those who build on shallow ground. What God is doing in you is deeper. It's slower. It's quieter. But it is stronger. He is building something in you that will last not for a moment, but for a lifetime. And that requires deep work. That requires patience. That requires a humility so strong that even when people overlook you, you remain faithful. Even when your name is not mentioned, you remain consistent. Because your reward does not come from men, it comes from God alone. When you choose humility, you step into alignment with the very nature of your Creator. God resists the proud, but He draws near to the humble. He lifts the lowly. He blesses the one who does not exalt themselves. And in a world that's obsessed with image, you must become obsessed with integrity. In a world that rewards performance, you must pursue authenticity. This walk with God is not about being impressive, it's about being surrendered. It's not about being popular, it's about being faithful. And if you can be faithful in silence, faithful in obscurity, faithful in humility, then you are ready to carry what God is preparing for you. There is a weight to what God is building in your life. It cannot be rushed, it cannot be microwaved, and it certainly cannot be built on pride. Lay your ego down, Lay your need for applause down. Lay your desire to respond to every voice down. And focus. Focus on what God is doing in you. Focus on who He is shaping you to become. Focus on the healing. Focus on the discipline. Focus on the refinement. Because that work, though hidden, though quiet, though painful, at times, is the work that produces true strength. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are in process. You are being prepared. You are being purified. And in due time, God's time, you will rise. And when you rise, it will not be because of your voice, but because of your silence. Not because of your pride, but because of your humility. Not because you forced your way in, but because God opened the door. That is the kind of rise that lasts. That is the kind of promotion no one can take away. That is the result of a life fully surrendered to God. And now I tell you, if you desire to walk in true favor, then walk in the unseen. If you desire to carry real peace, then learn to carry it in silence. God does not anoint the loudest voice in the room, but the quietest spirit in the secret place. It is not the one who boasts of their strength, but the one who bows before the Almighty in humility, who becomes the vessel for something greater. You will never find lasting fulfillment in the eyes of people. People change, crowds shift, applause fades, but God remains. And when you are rooted in God, you are no longer shaken by human opinion. Let them say what they will. Let them mock your silence, misunderstand your humility, question your stillness. But you remain planted. You remain grounded. You remain focused. Because you are not walking for their praise. You are walking for God's approval. And His approval is not loud. It's steady. It's not always visible to others, but it is always powerful. It shows up in your peace, in your resilience, in your ability to endure what others crumble under. That strength comes from God. And it grows only in the garden of silence and humility.